Okay. Yep. Hello. Welcome to the Canon Creative Studio at Sundance 2023. I'm Max Weinstein, Associate Editor of American Cinematographer. And today we're here with Xenia Matthews.
Hello.
And Christian Vasquez, the director and cinematographer of the short film OURIKA. Thank you both for joining us. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
So this movie is a lot of things. It's freely experimental, it's playful in the way that it's blending textures and tones, and, genre elements and themes. But for the folks who haven't gotten a chance to see it yet, Xenia, what can you tell us about this story and the way you chose to tell it?
So that's loud. Okay. So the original catalyst for me telling this story is I encountered this painting in an art history class about art in the Age of Revolutions. And we were looking at art connected to the French Revolution and the Haitian Revolution. And I saw this painting of this girl. She was down on her knees in sort of this praising position. And next to her was the bust of the person who sold her into slavery. And she had this like very gleeful expression on her face. And I just thought that was so eerie and so upsetting to look at, but it was also executed in this like very technically beautiful way. And I just sort of wanted to explore her story and her life and who she actually was, aside from what was chronicled about her in this book that was written about her.
And in terms of liberating her, there's a device in the film of her almost being resurrected through a doll, right? And this idea of like the commodification of the body. And so I'm curious if you could kind of just share a bit about that without, divulging too many details.
Yeah, so the person that this is sort of inspired by, she was a real girl. Her name was OURIKA, and she lived in the late 1700s, and after she died, a book was written about her. And the book is sort of written through this very like colonialist, just sort of white supremacist gaze, where the reason that she is ill and she is dying in the book is because of self-hatred, because of the hatred of her African heritage. And after this book was written, she was dead after the book was written, and it sort of sparked this whole pop cultural movement in like 1820s, 1830s France. And people would dress up as her, people would like write spin-off plays and other books, poems, they would sell merchandise with her likeness on it. And I was reading about that, and it just reminded me of the commodification that is sort of cyclical in colonized societies. So we see this commodification of the Black feminine over and over and over again in sort of these very distorted ways. And I just really wanted to explore that. So in the film, we have these, the way that the two scientist characters find her is that they hear her speaking to them through these dolls. And they're supposed to be antique dolls, like from the period, produced out of this whole OURIKA mania movement. And they hear her through these dolls, and it's actually really a literal representation of this prison that she's trapped in, of this object that she just cannot get free of. And yeah, that's the inspiration behind the dolls.
No, it's a really inspired idea, and obviously, Christian, the group that you founded, the Pegasus Media Project, right? That's a place where the two of you began to cultivate ideas like this, and so you know, my understanding is that the two of you connected through that program, and that you were making, I think, up to one short film per week during that time. And so that's a great way to build creative chemistry and get to know how to work together. So I'd love to hear you share, you know, that journey of connecting through the project and how it led to the making of this film.
Yeah, so I co-founded an organization called the Pegasus Media Project, which is based in Dallas. And we created a 15-week apprenticeship program that was aimed at folks who were very serious about pivoting their lives to where they're working in the media landscape in North Texas. And we're coming from a place where, if you think about apprenticeship pipelines in nursing, construction, welding, a lot of trades, there's really the infrastructure where you can go somewhere for 6 months, get a certificate, and then you can earn a dignified living, you know, where you can take care of yourself and your family. And we strongly believe that the same thing should exist in film for a number of roles that there are in film sets. And so we created this program, and Xenia was in our inaugural cohort, and so we met there. And you know, Xenia was so brilliant and fully formed on day one. And midway through the program, she approached us with this idea of Eureka. It was like the beginnings of the idea. And so we really just sat together, and she developed the idea inside the program.
Now, I want to talk about location. We have to talk about location. So this movie was shot over the course of 3 days in an abandoned hospital, right? 6 stories high. Nearly the entire film, all the sets were there with the exception of maybe one, I think. So how do you wind up with a location like this, first of all? And then once you get there, you know, what in the world is it like shooting in a place like that, and what does it bring to a film like this?
Yes, okay, so we filmed in an abandoned hospital, and how we got this location was, we're based out of Philadelphia. Christian lives in New Jersey right now, and we made the film through the Black Star Philadelphia Filmmaker Lab. It was fully funded, it was a lot of support, and one of their partners was All Ages Productions in Philadelphia. And one of the producers at All Ages, Laris, he showed us this location. It was the first location that we saw, and we just started, like, our minds just started turning. We saw the lab, which was on the ground floor, and we were like, this is a perfect space, perfect size. And then we went up a few floors, and we saw this just giant lecture hall. Like, the carpeting was like it's like fading away, it's like ripped up. There's so many rooms in the hospital where the paint is just peeling in the most nastiest way ever. And we just saw this location. The location manager, he was just like, you can do anything you want, you can paint the walls, you can do literally anything. He was like, this place is about to be demolished in the next year, so like, go nuts. And we did. We did.
So, I mean, how are you going nuts? Like, describe, you know, because there are various setups in here. I think one of the key ones, Christian, that you had mentioned when we first spoke was something called The Void, right? Where the OURIKA character is in this big, like, black room at the dinner table. So talk a little bit about shooting there. Is that, maybe that's a good sort of case study for how you guys could run wild in this decrepit place.
Yeah. I remember one of my favorite parts of the process of like shooting films is, you know, you just listen to the ideas of the director and you're just like, I don't know how we're gonna do that. How's that gonna work? And for our film, a central environment is this void space, this space that's described as between life and death. And Xenia told me that she wanted this place to feel infinite, you know, it's like a vast space, but it's a void, so it's completely dark, which is a big challenge as an image maker because you need shape, you know, you need light to shape people and give you a sense of space, you know. And so I honestly would just like lay awake at night just thinking, oh my gosh, how are we gonna film this? And we walked into this lecture hall in this defunct hospital, which had no heat, so it was very cold, no heat at all. And we were in this lecture hall is probably 30 feet by 60 feet. And I just remember looking at Kevin Gallagher, who's our gaffer. Quite sheepishly, I looked at him and I said, hey, Kevin, do you think that we could just black out this entire room? And he's such a nice guy. He said, yeah, no problem. We could swing that. And so now all of a sudden we had a 30-foot by 70-foot studio space, and it had plenty of height, and it had the right ceilings where you could mount lights wherever you wanted to. So we basically transformed this lecture hall into a functional studio space, which was amazing. Amazing.
That is amazing. So, and in terms of your camera of choice, this is obviously a very freewheeling shoot, and Xenia, you love to, just go and move through these setups very quickly. And so I understand you opted for the Canon C70, and by keeping the rig pretty small, that allowed you to kind of move through those setups. So yeah, just talk about, how your camera of choice aided that effort, and also how it might have helped you both capture just the overall look and feel that you developed together for this project.
Yeah, for me, as an image maker, I have to have a really deep knowledge with the camera I'm using. I'm the kind of person where I'll just go on walks and explore with the camera, and that's how I relate to the world, And the C70, it starts with the sensor. The sensor is so clean and beautiful, and it just gives you a base image that you could color, layer on texture any way you want, but you have the security of understanding that base image has integrity, And so for this film, we knew at the beginning we wanted a lot of texture. Mm-hmm. We wanted the film to feel grungy in certain scenes. We wanted there to be a layer of softness over everything. But then in some scenes, we wanted a clinical look. And so at an image level, the C70 was the right choice for this film. But also, ergonomically, with the C70, you're able to rig it up in a traditional narrative rig where you have wireless follow focus, all these things, and the camera's like this big, But within a minute, you can just lift the camera up, and I can handhold it, bare bones, just the camera and the lens, and be really close to the performers, which I think enabled some of the performances in the film.
Mm-hmm. Does that lend itself a bit of, Xenia, did you find as a director that because of that freedom that the rig allowed, did it afford you opportunities to improvise a bit in terms of the visual language and camera movement and stuff like that? Because when you're working in experimental film, it's not maybe storyboarded to a T, and every single camera movement is mapped out beat for beat. So, yeah, how did you navigate that, with the camera movement in mind?
Right. I feel like it did enable us to move from setup to setup pretty quickly. There were a lot of moments where we had to improvise, where we didn't necessarily have as much time as we wanted to get some shots. So we shot the film in 3 days, and each and every second and minute of those days was very important. So there were moments where we were like, okay, we're not gonna have time to do this setup in the ground floor location. Let's just do it right here. If you guys have seen the Sundance trailer, the last shot of the girl opening her eyes with the red wash over it, that's our film. And that was filmed in such a moment of, it was
stress.
Just so much stress. We were like, okay, but we have to have this shot. It's just non-negotiable. So we were spraying the lens. We were like, okay, Avisha, stand really still. Oh, our lead actress, Avisha, she's here. Avisha Harry. Those are her eyes in the trailer, yes. And I was just like, Avisha, okay, we're just gonna do this a couple times. And she was literally just opening and closing her eyes until we could get the right shot. We have shots of the blob just this like giant amorphous mass. We got those fairly quickly while the second floor location was being reset. We went downstairs and got shots of this blob. We got shots of the scientists like pouring chemicals into beakers. And this was just like all in between setups. So just like quick, like 20 minutes. And we were just able to go and get those shots because of the camera setup that we were using.
And I think as a DP, I love working with directors and protecting the vision, like protecting the dream, What I love about filmmaking is there's such an insane tension on set because it could really just all fall apart on a dime. That's like a real possibility. And sometimes it does, and you just go your separate ways. But that tension I love that stress, but I don't want the director to feel stressed about the logistics of moving from setup to setup. For me, it's my job to take care of that so that Xenia can live inside the dream,
Yeah, absolutely. And, Xenia, you made a number of films before, but I understand this is your first film with an entire crew, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, so what did you glean from that experience that you might pass on to other filmmakers, who find themselves in a similar situation?
So I was extremely nervous before the shoot. The older actresses that we were working with, Joylette and Lenny, were both very, very strong people. And I was, in a way, like kind of intimidated by them. They had been working and acting for over 40 years. And I was just a little bit intimidated by them. I'm like, what if they ask questions that I can't answer? Or what if they challenge me in a way that just like takes me out of my comfort zone? But as soon as I stepped on set on the first day of our shoot, I was just like, oh, I know exactly what I'm doing. I know how to do this. I really felt like I stepped into my power, and I don't know, I never questioned myself on set. I was like, I know exactly what this needs to be. So I would say to anyone who's first time directing, just trust yourself. If the work is there and the work is strong and you've done that work of grounding and knowing your story and knowing your characters and knowing what this film means beyond the plot, everything is just gonna fall into place.
Yeah, absolutely. And for folks listening who are reading American Cinematographer and thinking about, image making, it's an incredibly important sort of staple of what filmmakers are doing to glean insights into specifically the director and cinematographer rapport and relationship. And so what did the two of you learn from one another about that collaborative dynamic that others might be able to take away?
You wanna go ahead?
You go ahead, because you shot your last film, right? Or no?
Oh, a few things.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question again? That was like a long sentence.
Yeah, no. So basically, specifically talking about your working relationship as a director-cinematographer team, what did you learn about the nature of that sort of collaborative dynamic that other directors and cinematographers, might be better off knowing and learning?
Okay, I got you. Okay, so the reason I picked Christian in the first place was I knew he was an extremely intuitive maker, and that's how I had made all my previous films, just like very intuitively. This was my first scripted film. This was, the first film I wrote a script for, the first film I had like a crew with, and just like having those like very new elements, I just wanted to work with someone that was familiar. I wanted to work with someone that I know had like a softer personality, just like me, so there would be like no unnecessary arguments on set, just like save time, save money. But I didn't even care what his work looked like. Like, he sent me his portfolio, I was like, cool, it looks great, but like, it looks incredible, but I've never made anything that looked bad, so I knew that was off the table. So I knew that I just needed to have like that very soft, very intuitive presence that just like matched my energy so that we could just work and flow together.
Yeah, and for me, my favorite directors to work with are folks who really live inside their films. Like the films come from a deep place, and with Xenia, she understood what she wanted really clearly. You know, she had a bunch of beautiful descriptions of what she wanted the film to feel like, while at the same time making space for me to step in and contribute what I had to contribute. And so I love when I can work like that. And it's like I liken it to like performing music, you know, jazz music specifically. Like jazz is a medium that is very rigid. It has a serious structure, but what defines you as a jazz musician is your ability to improvise. That's who you are, and it's about living in the moment and being intuitive. And those are the kinds of films I like to make. And I could tell from day one that that's how Xenia wanted to work.
No, for sure, jazz. I mean, it's all about preparation and structure, and then you're finding those moments of discovery within those parameters, right? So,
because you're nothing without the prep, and we did months and months of prep and conversation, shot list after shot list. We just knew every single day we walked on set, we knew what we needed to do. You know?
Yeah. So at this time, I'd love to hear from anyone in the audience who might have a question for these filmmakers.
Chester Hospital, yeah, it's in. Maybe. They shot. What did they shoot there?
The Kate Winslet HBO detective series.
Mayor of
Easttown.
Yeah, Mayor of Easttown. They shot a few scenes there.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I'm just grateful that I brought him because I haven't seen the film yet, and I really enjoyed his conversation so far. I would like to know more about the Pegasus project that you launched, and if there are other collaborations. I mean, can you tell us a little bit more? It's just really nice.
So the question is wanting to learn more about the Pegasus Media Project, which is an organization I co-founded with a person named Nilu Jaliban in Dallas. And so the Pegasus Media Project, the function of the organization is to bring people into the film industry who are historically excluded. This industry has a serious problem with, privileged people making their way and sort of excluding folks who don't have access to the equipment or the education. And specifically, we just really believe that the skills you need to function on a film set are very teachable, and they don't need to be so protected by these kind of exclusive spaces. And so right now we are working on fundraising to sort of make a more robust and sustainable program. So stay tuned this year and we'll have more to share.
What's next for your film, and then what's next for both of you?
Yes, so next for our film, we've applied to quite a few festivals, still waiting for some letters back. Obviously, I feel like the Sundance acceptance will get us a lot of other places. But next for the film, I'm actually developing it into a installation film where we get to sink deeper into the void space with OURIKA and having it being this like very immersive, just like sort of live show experience. So that's what's next for that. I've written grant applications for it. If anyone has any money, that would be nice. And then next for me, I was actually accepted into the Sundance Screenwriting Lab, but I deferred my acceptance into the next cycle. But I'm currently writing a feature about this sort of body meld, time, space travel, mother-daughter adventure that explores a lot about the relationships that Black women have between each other, reproductive health, and also really firmly exploring abortion as like a positive, life-affirming choice, sort of disconnecting it from this this sort of grave life and death situation that it's been portrayed for all these years. So it's a very like fun, just like amalgamation of me and my mom's like life experiences. So that is what I am writing at the moment.
And for me, I'm in pre-production on an experimental concert film. It's kind of like a portrait of musical culture in Dallas. And so it's going to feature live performances from a broad range of artists. And then I'm in production on a long-term project with an organization called Mothers Against Police Brutality, which is a nationwide coalition of mothers whose children were killed by the police. And they are working every day to make policy changes in that realm.
Well, that's a lot to look forward to. Terrific. Well, I think that about wraps up the conversation. And massive thank you again to Xenia and Christian for joining us. Thank you to everyone for coming out. And
Can we shout out some people that
yeah,
are here from our
do some
film?
shout outs, please.
Yeah.
All right, you go first.
Yeah, I would like to highlight Stephanie Mousen. She is our producer. This is the only way this three-day shoot worked.
It's the only way.
Yes. I already shouted out Avisha Harry. She's our lead actress. Her eyes are in the trailer, last shot, if you see it, the Sundance bumper that happens before every film. Who else? Oh, Doreen Garner. She's an artist in New York. She made The Blob in our film. It's a very massive piece of art, and it's absolutely beautiful. Dave, our composer, who is also here, did the music and the sound design with me. So, yeah, go ahead.
I got a couple. Shane Moore and Kevin Gallagher, who are our Grip and Gaff team, they were just so incredible at taking in what I wanted about the light and the qualities of the light, but they complicated the light through the fixtures they used. They just sort of made it more nuanced than I ever could have, and I'm just so eternally grateful to them for that. We would not have these images without them. Hannah Hamilton, who's the production designer. Again, a cinematographer is nothing without the production designer. So I'm so grateful to her for everything she brought and the creativity she brought. And then lastly, a gentleman named Kyle Montgomery, who lives in Dallas, Texas, who's one of my most trusted colleagues. He was the assistant camera, but he was more than that. He was my confidant and my brainstorming partner in devising all the little things we did to give the look of the film. So yeah, those are the folks.
Oh, one more. Shatiana Watkins, who did the hair for our film. Like, if you love this hair, you'll love the hair in the film. She made this
Yes,
massive wig. She made all the wigs. It killed it. Absolutely slated.
So thank you to everyone who worked on this movie.
All right, terrific. On behalf of
Thank you.
Canon and American Cinematographer, have a great rest of the fest.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.